And Don, you came out of the manned aircraft industry. So how do you address, how do you convince people that unmanned systems are not just a, negative distraction?
It's interesting. I've been listening to this, and I'm out of the military also, right? So I think about, I don't think we've talked about it so much yet about the privacy issue, right? Like I'm thinking about what happened over in Minneapolis recently, where drones were deployed to watch protesters, right? And I, when I think about one of the challenges to adoption, I think all the things that were discussed are really important. I mean, you've got to show the benefit, right? But the thing that people really hold really tightly is, how do I know I'm not being watched, right? I mean, and I think that's probably an area that needs a lot more thinking, especially in this environment we're in right now, right? I mean, this is not, the best political environment for these kind of conversations. I always think back to, when I used to read 1984, right? And Orwell, and, the fact that, people have kind of adopted to more and more intrusion of their privacy in their life and given up more and more information. But the question is, will there be a snapback at some point, right? And so the question is how do we manage that also? So when I think about this, I think that if you can assure people that somebody's not creeping out over your yard, taking pictures of whoever in the backyard sunning themselves, or you're not watching me go places and where I'm buying my guns or whatever, right? I'm trying to be very, both sides on this. I think everything else will come along, right? Because, the benefit, like you say, the noise is solvable to some extent. We'll work that off on time. The issue of convenience is going to get guaranteed, because look how easily we fall into convenience in this society. We give up a lot for convenience, right? So I really think the privacy issue is the one that, I think is going to be a big pole in the tent.
Laurent, what do you think the biggest issue about public perception for drones is?
Well, to come back to what Anna said before, I think it's really, to what extent do the benefits outweigh these adverse impacts? I think it's not a coincidence that in many countries, the use case that is highlighted the most is medical supplies delivery between hospitals. Michael, you alluded to COVID response. Obviously, those are topics where the benefits drastically outweigh these adverse impacts. And there is also no coincidence that the authorities are pushing that much and that hard for to enable those use cases. I think I would concur with what Don said, that data privacy, or privacy in general, is probably one aspect that is very hard to regulate and to act upon, because, well, as just mentioned, it's not a technology answer to that question. It's really a matter of having a proper framework for regulation and the public opinion as well. I'm come from Europe, where the Gdpr, so General Data Protection Regulation, has been pushed heavily, closely followed by California recently with a very similar approach. There is still huge open questions about how to actually enforce those regulations. How do you actively audit companies about that? There is no such thing as being GDPR approved or data privacy regulation approved. It's really a matter of continuous work on that, and there are so many aspects to look at that it's hard to come up with a silver bullet on that topic. So yeah, I think I definitely concur with Don that this is one of the biggest hurdles here.
Great. Okay, we only have about 10 minutes left, and I wanted to go back to something that has come up over and over again. And this is sort of an interesting idea as we talk more about automated flights and transportation and longer range flights, that there's this real dichotomy between what has to happen at the national level and what has to happen at the local level. for everything from like Don saying, hey, in order to know what the weather is right here, you got to have somebody right there telling you. But then there's regulations, there's state and local authorities who know what's going on in their transportation systems, in their event schedule, as well as the sort of higher level authorities. So, Michael, let me direct this to you. How can drone companies kind of work with their state and local authorities as well to kind of help ease the public perception in the community and help ease their way into a seamless integration into communities?
Yeah, so I think it's a multi-part approach. One is there's federal, making sure you have all the federal rules and regulations and understand why those are in place and how can you support, either to change those or to adjust them from a state. How can a state support managing up to the federal government, but also managing down to the counties and cities, and then vice versa, and then keep going down to counties, managing and supporting operations from sheriffs to infrastructure, and then maybe even down to a city, a more progressive city. And they're on the tip of the spear with data and dealing with local governments or with citizens and the way that they react to drones. So it's a multi-pronged approach, and it's giving some type of integration like they do today. Federal government manages federal roads, state, local, state roads, county, and then city, and they all work together. Everything works well, and there's types of asset management systems in place. And I think that is what is going to help support the drone industry is everyone pushing in the same direction. Because right now there's federal government's going one direction with safety, and states going another, and the cities are going the opposite, and it's bringing them together. And what we're seeing is economic development seems to be the number for us is how by introducing a new type of infrastructure into your communities or county or state that you're providing something that no one else has. You have rail, you have aviation, but now offer new drone infrastructure. And if you get support like that, that's what we're seeing is funding and private funding coming together in the sense of a new type of infrastructure, connected community, economic development, and drones for good. I think if we can wrap those all together down the road from now, there'll be seamless systems, open source, data exchange, and platforms that will support all companies for all different types of operations, but on a shared infrastructure so that UPS isn't building out their own infrastructure and Amazon's not building out their own infrastructure, but it's being supported from federal, state, and local government. And that's what, to me, is what we're going to see in 5 years from now, that we're going to start to see states actually supporting and moving ahead of others because they're helping support the infrastructure required to make it scale. So.
Anyone else on that, on how local communities can get more involved kind of in making the whole infrastructure for drone operations work together?
Well, I think that is sort of, that's part of our mission at CAMI. We aren't strictly focused on drones, but we recognize that it is an integral part of the overall sort of airspace consideration, and all of these integration issues are obviously very important. So we have some programs that allow state and local jurisdictions to connect to each other and to the industry and to learn. We produce educational materials, that kinds of thing. But I think building these lines of communication is so important. Just sessions like this even are important to kind of make those connections, get the word out. And then, we see our role as sort of building a dialogue bridge between the folks that need the information and the folks that have it. So making sure that the industry is hearing from the state and local decision makers about what their punch list of concerns looks like, and that those decision makers are getting the information that they need to be able to make an informed decision about how best to move forward or not, frankly, with this in their communities.
Great.
We talked about the infrastructure, and I'll go back to it, is that I'd like to see the municipalities and the local governments understand that the P3 concept of public-private partnership, if if we could get weather infrastructure in places we don't have it today, which is really critical for things like in a city, knowing how the wind's going to flow through an urban canyon following a dirty bomb release or chemical attack or air pollution moving through the city. If we can use the drone industry as the reason for these municipalities and localities to invest in this infrastructure and then get paid for their data, that's not only going to help this the drone industry, that's going to solve a problem that we have right now that the federal government is not going to be able to solve. And it's going to make a better standard of living in these communities for people who have asthma or, when we put out air pollution warnings today, we put them out over a large area, but we know right now that there are plumes in areas based on the wind flow that day and others where you don't have to stay in the house necessarily in all parts of the city, but because we don't have the granularity, we can't really discern it. So, I'm hoping that this will help open up that also to show what's possible in the infrastructure side.
And to add a little bit on that, maybe it's a good opportunity to poke a little bit the FAA on this topic and say, we've been in touch with many state DOTs, local authorities who actually are willing to help monitor and help integrate UAS into the airspace within their area of responsibility. Coming back to a program that started a couple of years ago, the UAS Integration Pilot Program, the IPP. The reason why authorities and public and government organizations were supposed to be the lead applicants was that the FAA wanted to look at this dimension. How can state and local authorities help integrate UAS into the airspace? So we've seen that the focus of the IPP switched and moved a little bit away from that, but it's probably a good opportunity to remind the FAA that that's something where state and local authorities are really eager to help and support. So let's have a discussion about, coming back to the framework I mentioned earlier, what are those conditions where the FAA would feel comfortable having state and local authorities help integrate UAS into the airspace?
All right. Thank you so much. We're just about out of time. So I wanted to end the discussion by asking our panelists one final question, just in 30 seconds or less. From your place in the ecosystem, how will the drone industry look different in 10 years? So 10 years. Anna, you start.
I don't think we'll be talking about it near as much.
Good point. Michael, what do you think?
I agree, but I think it will be integrated. I think the term of the 4 pillars, it'll be integrated to the point where we're used to it, just like cell phones tracking us. So a single global digital infrastructure wrapped around the globe here.
Sounds good. Laurent, what do you think?
Well, I'd like to piggyback on what Anna said earlier with the drone industry having impact on other industries. Obviously, what we're trying to prove is that UTM is a great concept and solution to help automate and integrate drones into the airspace, but actually it has tremendous potential to help ATM systems and air traffic controllers manage manned aviation in the future as well. So that's where I would see the impact of UTM in 10 years.
Terrific. And Don?
Our biggest gaps in weather measurements are between the surface and like 2,000 feet. I want every drone to be a weather sensor.
There you go.
Oh, wow. Cool idea.
That's good.
I'd like to thank our distinguished panel for joining me today, and also thank DroneFest and AUVSI NC for hosting us. Thanks, everybody.